our guest speaker. And I remember in Feb, I actually gave, as Vice President of Public Relations, I gave a speech regarding my PR strategy. And part of my speech was, I actually mentioned that I was building a community with media houses such as News 24 and Tutorial. And again, I also mentioned, I think Kama was evaluating me. I also mentioned that I was in communication with an inspirational CEO in South Africa. And honestly, the conversation had not started. So this was a manifestation, And I really reached out to a number of really inspirational people and the no's and yeses. But in those no's and yeses, there's that one yes that will open all of them. And after that PR strategy speech that I gave, that's when I actually reached out to Mr. Madi's office. And on the very same day, I received a yes that unlocked all of the no's and the yeses, and I'm truly grateful for that. If I may give Mr. Madi's bio. So Lincoln, I'm trying my best. Self-talk, I'm so spoiled. Self-talk accepts me. Lincoln Madi, recipient of the Distinguished Old Rhodium Award 2014, holds an MBA from Henley Business School, an advanced management program from Harvard Business School, and executive education from Duke Thunderbird, MIT, INSEAD, Wits Business School, and the University of Johannesburg. A South African business leader guided by a singular conviction that transformation, inclusive growth, and the development of people are not merely business imperatives, but societal ones. He has spent more than 25 years in financial services, building a reputation for leading complex organizations through significant change while keeping human potential at the center of every decision. As Chief Executive Officer of Lesaka Technology Southern Africa, he leads one of Africa's premier fintech platforms listed on both Nasdaq and the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Since joining in 2021, he has stirred the business back to profitability and positioned it for sustainable long-term growth across the continent's rapidly evolving fintech landscape. Prior to Lesaka, he held progressively senior leadership roles during a distinguished two-decade career at Standard Bank Group, gaining deep expertise in banking and payments. He's also the founding president of the Association of South African Payment Providers, an industry body championing a more inclusive and competitive payment ecosystem in South Africa. Beyond the boardroom, Lincoln's greatest commitment is to the next generation of African leaders. He's the author of Blazing a Trail, Lessons for African Leadership, and founder of the Lincoln Madi Leadership Foundation. The Foundation's annual Youth Leadership Summit, hosted in partnership with Henley Business School, and now in its fourth year, brings together 200 selected young leaders from across the continent each year for mentorship and engagement with senior business executives. He's also the founder of the Mzwanile Madi Sports Rugby Tournament and Champions League, which is now in its 12th year and spans 138 schools across the Eastern Cape, a flagship youth development initiative that uses sport to foster discipline, opportunity, and educational advancement. Lincoln's contributions have earned widespread recognition. He received the 2025 All Africa Business Leader of the Year award. In 2026, he was awarded the Most Inspirational Leader award at the Future Fit Awards in Johannesburg. And on the same day, the Legacy and Leadership Award by Erin College of Boston. Having served as a class speaker at his own Harvard graduation in 2013, he was invited to give the 30th commencement address at Erin College of Boston's 30th commencement, where he received an honorary doctorate in humanities. Lincoln is married to Zwa, and together they have 3 children, Lihle, Amara, and Neil. Ladies and gentlemen, Please help me call onto, should I say stage? Okay. Please help me welcome Mr. Madi. Well, his speech does not have a title, but it is what it is. Please help me to call him to stage, Mr. Lincoln Madi.
To the wonderful gathering that's here on a day like this, you've surprised me. I was expecting a message that said the function has been cancelled due to unforeseen circumstances. But here you are, and I really honor you for making the time to be here. I want to begin with a speech. No, not this one, but a speech I gave 37 years ago. It was 1989. It was at Rose University. I was the president of the Black Student Movement. And the government had just banned our organization. The campus was electric with anger, with fear, and such energy from the students who were deciding not to be afraid. They wanted to defy the government. And there I was giving the speech as the president of the student movement. I didn't realize at the time that this would be the most important speech in my life. Because in the crowd was an amazing young woman. I didn't know her. Her name was Val. Something in what I said, or in how I said it, touched her. Today, Zva is my wife. My anchor through the darkest chapters of my life. My partner in everything I do. She's not in the room tonight, but she's been beside me every single day over the last many years. This club, what you do here every day, is built on the conviction that words chosen carefully and delivered the right way and with courage can change the direction of a life. I am living proof of that. Let me start where it all began. When I was a boy, the system was built to forget. By the time I was 18, I'd been expelled from school. I was in and out of jail. I was part of an angry group of young people who wanted to leave the country, who wanted to make the country ungovernable and bring the apartheid system down. I'd been arrested in front of my family, detained, interrogated, assaulted by the security police. Most of my closest friends had fled the country. Some were imprisoned or killed. I had not been studying for 2 years. I was angry, I was thin, I was hunted. And as far as the system was concerned, I was one of the lost generation. One day, I was hiding from the police in a church in Kwazake. My father found me. Wellington Mzwandile Mali walked in, saw me, and was shocked by how much weight I'd lost. He pulled me into a big hug, and then in that church, he got right into it. He did not condemn me. He did not try to stop me. Instead, he told me stories. I want to listen to stories. Stories about people that had studied and became something because they invested in education. I was not ready for that conversation. I already fought. I wanted guns, I wanted stones. But this man was telling me about a future I did not see or imagine. I had no smart plan. I sat and I listened. And then he said this. And I've carried these words for more than 40 years. The most important thing for you is not to have the largest stone to throw at the police, or the most potent petrol bomb to throw against the army. The most important thing is to get the best education, embrace the best values, principles, and ethics, and be exemplary in everything you do. This is the most powerful weapon you can have. And then you quietly end. You cannot change anything or anybody unless you first change yourself. You can't lead any cause unless you lead yourself. That was the most important moment of my life. In a church in Kwazake, my father gave me not a command, but a viable alternative. And I took it. BA, LLB from Rhodes, MBA from Henley Business School, Advanced Management at Harvard. And at Harvard, in 2013, my classmates elected me to be their class speaker. The boy who had been banned from speaking, who had been told his voice did not matter, standing on a global stage at Harvard, speaking for the room. My father passed away in 2010. And the most urgent question I've carried since then is, how do I pay back? How do I pay forward? How do I repay all of those people who believed in me? Because, ladies and gentlemen, recognition that does not open doors for others is just a trophy that I dust. Tonight, I want to talk about how I am trying to pay back. And I want to talk about it against three key pillars. One, sport and the boy child. The second is young professionals and entrepreneurs building this continent. The third one is the young leaders I've taken a bet on throughout my career. So let's start with the first one, which is sport and the boy child. My father played rugby for the Orientals Rugby Football Club. I was born into the tradition. This is a club that was formed in 1894. I was able to play rugby at a young age for my school and for my club, and later for my university. Rugby gave me discipline. It gave me identity. It gave me pride. A reason to stay in school when everything else was pulling me away. But when I look back at the Eastern Cape years later, rugby was dying. Dying in the townships and villages that gave birth to it. Boys were being drawn into drugs and violence because the game that once held communities together had gone quiet. I could not let that stay. In 2014, I started the Mzwani and the Mali Schools Rugby Tournament in honor of my late father. We started with 8 schools from townships in Korea. I funded it myself. Nobody believed it would last. And it lasted, and it grew. By 2026, 60 schools across 7 areas in the Eastern Cape, more than 1,400 boys. The finals at the Isaac Wilson Stadium in 2025 were watched by 950,000 people on SuperSport. Hold that number, 950,000. Our Mzwani Lemali 15 that gets selected from these teams and these players has competed in the 3 elite festivals in this country that have been going on for the last 2 years. The Noordsee Festival, the St. Stithians Festival, and the Grey Pea Festival. And we've taken some scalps and beaten a number of teams. I'm not going to embarrass those teams. But I want to give you one boy, Buko. He grew up in Fort Beaufort, the very town where my father was born. He was selected the captain of the Mzwani Lemali 15, that select team that carries my father's name. In 2024, he boarded a plane for the first time in his life and flew to Kent in England. Those 22 boys played in England, sat around dinner tables in English homes, and discovered that the world was bigger than they've been told, and they belong in that new world. They played amazing games with some of the finest schools in the UK. Maybe one day they will play those boys for South Africa against England. I genuinely mean that. When Buko came back home, he was selected for Border Under 21 and won the South Africa Under 21 Shield. And this year, he reached the Varsity Shield final with the Walter Sisulu University. He's not alone. Other boys from my tournament have earned provincial colors, played at Graham College, given a full scholarship at Graham College, and others are playing at universities across the country. Ladies and gentlemen, talent is everywhere. Opportunity is not. Seeing them rise from our dusty fields to the heights they've achieved is exactly why we started the tournament. But that was chapter 1. 12 years, 60 schools, a tournament. But the tournament has a final whistle. And when that whistle blew, the season ends for these guys. That gap kept me awake. So we went bigger this year, which is chapter 2, building a league. A league for South African township and village schools in the Eastern Cape. Tomorrow morning, I travel to KwaNobuhle in the Eastern Cape to officially launch this league. Let me tell you what it is. The Mzwandile Lemali Schools Rugby Champion League has 138 schools, 14 local zones from Gqeberha to Mthatha, a year-round competitive rugby for more than 3,000 schools from township and village schools across the Eastern Cape. This is a structured league with regular features, zone rivalry, a full season so that the games never end and the boys never stop competing and growing. Every match will be covered by Super Sports schools. The scouts looking for the next year policy will be there to find this boys. This is the largest township rugby structure in South Africa, built on one belief that geography should not determine your destiny. But how was I going to do this? Every dream I had, I always go back to Spar, and I always tell there's another dream. And so we have to postpone something. But this time, I reached out to South Africans to say, help me not to fail again for this 12th year. Let us have a league. And South Africans responded. And we raised R1 million within 28 days by individuals, South Africans here and abroad, who said, we see you young men, and we want to help you. And so, R1 million, 28 days, because South Africa still has a heart. So tomorrow, I travel to KwaNobuhle with Justinus Adriansen, an old boy of this company, one of the donors who made this possible to launch this league. This season will run all the way through to August, and then we will have the grand finals at the Moko village in Devonlake, in the villages of the Eastern Cape. From 8 schools on a dusty field to 138 schools across the Eastern Cape. From a tournament with a final whistle to a league with no off-season. Not charity, a pipeline, built on one belief that geography should not determine destiny. No time to solve. This is what is inspiring excellence looks like. Not a corporate strategy, but on a dusty field where a boy who has never been on a plane and a dream that will not sit still. Let me come to the second pillar of what I wanted to talk about. On my 55th birthday, those of us who are now 50 will know that at our age, birthdays are just Thanksgiving. So on my 55th birthday, I felt a debt to every mentor who had made time for me. Not a debt of money, a debt of attention, of time. Given what was given to me, that became the Youth Leaders Summit with Henley Business School. This is now in its 4th year. 9 days from tonight, 16 top leaders of this country will spend an entire day with 200 young professionals from over 800 applications. Think of it, 885 applications, 13 countries on the continent, 200 selected. 55.5% of them are women. That is cohort 4, the most diverse, the most competitive, most continental summit we'll ever run. 13 countries, 1 room, 1 day. More than 4 applications for every single place. But let me introduce you to someone who comes from Dimakat. I don't want to give you numbers. I want to give you a person. Her name is Dimakatso Ramoya. To grow up in a rural village in Bolawentu, attended schools with almost no resources, and built a career in transport and logistics. Dimakatso was part of our 2024 cohort. She almost did not apply. This is what she said about that moment of hesitation. That word, leader, sat heavily on my chest. Could I really call myself one? Leaders in my mind were people policed by privilege. I was just a young woman from Bulawayo, a survivor shaped more by fire than by comfort. Yet she applied anyway. She came, and this year she's publishing a book describing the summit as a doorway to the future version of herself she had not yet met. Maybe leadership, she says, is not about where you start. Maybe it is about the courage to answer when temples call. That is what the summit produces. People who arrive uncertain about whether they belong and living, knowing that they do. Sport saved the boy, but institutions shape a generation. Toastmasters, every prepared speech in this club, every table topic, every honest evaluation that tells someone you're better than you think, you're doing exactly this. You are opening the doorway for the next generation of leaders by what you do in this club every day. Let me get to the last pillar. The third pillar is betting on young leaders in my career. The third pillar is not a foundation or a league. It is every decision I've made across 25 years to trust a young person before the world has confirmed that it was safe to do so. The most consequential of those calls was made on behalf of someone I'd only known for 5 hours. One story, set not on a rugby field, but in the most demanding areas of all, a crisis. Think to Zimbabwe, 2022. So 2002. What I call the not one day visit. I was thankful. I was the regional director for Standard Bank Central Africa Portfolio, reporting to Sim Chabalala. Sim called me one day. He says, come with me to Zimbabwe tomorrow. It will just be one day. I want you to know I love you. It was not a one-day visit. The entire board of the bank had resigned. A woman named P.D. Lenyamoro was selected as the new MD through a rigorous internal process. She was at the center of a governance system. We walked, Sim and I, into the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. 2 young bankers being dressed down by a governor for a crisis not of our making. When the meeting was over, Sim asked me to stay and fix the situation. He flew home and I stayed for 12 days. My first meeting was with Pindi herself for 5 hours. And yet she sat across me, composed, clear-eyed, with a lot of grace, more than I'd ever expected. And she told me her strength was her faith. She told me her life story. And that she placed everything that was happening in God's hands. She did not perform confidence that she did not have. She simply told me who she was. And I knew before that conversation was over exactly what I was going to do. This is 2002. I made up my mind to fight for her appointment. The first person I had to win over was the chairman of the board, the late Mr. Sanyang. Pindi and I spent the whole day with him. He was meticulous, measured, and deeply protective of the board's integrity. I did not rush him. When he was finally satisfied, he gave us his blessings. And then he asked us to meet every board member individually. We did. Pindi beside me at every meeting. Their objection was never about Pindi. It was about the process that had bypassed the board's authority. So at every meeting, we sought forgiveness. Only then did we ask them to look at the candidate. And then I let Pindi speak for herself. What they saw when she walked in was not the person at the center of the controversy. They saw a leader that she actually was. One by one, the objections fell away. When the reconstituted board met, they unanimously appointed Pindi Nyandoro as the managing director of Stanbic Zimbabwe, the first women CEO in Zimbabwe's banking history. She led that business for 5 years. From there on, she was elected or appointed as the regional CEO of Standard Bank across 6 countries. Today, she is the regional director of the Southern Africa for Nordfarm. Pindi is one story. Over 25 years, there have been many more. And every time I made those calls, I was repeating what my father did for me in that church in KwaZulu. You cannot change anything or anybody until you first change yourself. You can't lead any cause unless you lead yourself. Your time. This is what leadership development looks like from the inside. Leadership is not a title held. It's not a position attained. It's a profound influence fight. It's not a program. A person has to be willing to trust another person before the world has confirmed it is safe to do so. So, ladies and gentlemen, the dream, the speech, and the answer. 3 pillars, 3 answers. And every single one of them started with a young person who refused to believe the world has already decided their worth. In a church in KwaZulu, my father held a theme, hunted boy, and told him he would go to Harvard one day. Among the recognitions that arrived, an honorary degree in humanities from the Albert College of Boston. The boy my father dreamed would go to Harvard was standing on the stage in Boston, recognized not for a title or a deal, but for a life. On the evening of that ceremony in Boston, I was not in Johannesburg. My children accepted an award on my behalf. And my son, Liam Mali, stood up and spoke to a gathering of some of South Africa's finest business people in his father's place. I was not there. But something tells me my father was there. My father did not live to see any of this. As I told you, he passed away in 2010. But every single one of those honors belonged to him. He dreamed the dream. I just had the privilege of living it. Again, I say, recognition that does not open doors for others is just a trophy. That is why I committed every honor entirely to our the rugby boys, to Dimakats, to the next PD, to the next young person hiding in a church, waiting for someone to tell them stories. In 1989, I gave a speech, and a young woman in the crowd answered by deciding that a young man speaking was worth knowing. His far has been the reason for everything ever since. Bukoani answered by pulling on the captain's armband of a team named after my father, boarding a plane for the first time and coming home as a border under 21 champion. Dimakato Ramuela answered by hovering a thumb over an ink, feeling all the fear and clicking anyway, and then writing to me, and now this year publishing a book so that the next woman from Ulabetu is less afraid to click that link. Pindinia Doro answered by walking into a 3 or 5 hour meeting with a stranger, telling him simply who she was and trusting it would be enough. My father answered it first in a church in Kwazakele, his arm around his son he had not seen in months, telling stories about Luthuli and Mandela to a boy who wanted guns. The most important thing is to get the best education, embrace the best values, and be exemplary in everything you do. This is the most powerful weapon you can have. These words were spoken to me more than 40 years ago. I've tried to live by them every single day. They were his dream. Today, they are my reality. That is the skill my father used in that church. Words. That is the skill I used in 1989. Now I have got my person. The skill this club practices every single meeting, in every prepared speech, every table topic, every evaluation that tells someone you're better than you think you are. If you're a young person in the room tonight, this speech is for you, not about you. For you, you are the future. You are the answer right now, tonight. Somewhere out there is a young person waiting for a person to refuse to give up with them. Waiting for the person to tell them stories when they want ammunition. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Youth Month. And tomorrow morning, I will drive to KwaNobuhle and hand a rugby ball to a boy who does not yet know that the world is waiting for them. It is in that one conversation. Matang, I return control of this extraordinary evening back to you. And before I do so, I want to tell this august audience that you are an alumni, that you are one of the people in 2025 that was one of the members of our youth summit. But what's more important is that this year, in 2026, the 200 young delegates who are going to be there will be having lanyards and keyrings that have been donated by you through your company, Art Power. In 9 days' time from now, you are telling the next version of the story because somebody gave you an opportunity and you are giving the next 200 an opportunity. That is how we do what we do. Dimakata wrote a book, No Time to Put Your Business in the Hands of the Next Couple. That is what answering looks like. Find the next generation of leaders. Sit beside them. Trust them with the answer. Build with purpose. Lead with courage. And give back with your whole heart.